Hello, I'm your host, Jim McLean. Welcome back to another episode of the BanterFlix Movie Review Podcast. This week, it's a Disney special. We may have changed the name and went back to the classic name that we started this podcast with many years ago, but we couldn't sacrifice. We need to talk about Disney. And that, of course, means we have to have our resident Disney queen, Victoria Brown. I don't know why I went with that, Victoria, but I went with it. I'm going to stick with it. So you will forevermore, anytime you're introduced in that way, you will be known as BanterFlix's resident Disney queen. Hello, Victoria.
Hello, Jim.
How are you? How are things with yourself? Because I know you've been busy. I know last week you were doing a book sale. So how are things? What exciting things have you been up to?
Exciting's a strong way to put it, but
it can be exciting if you want it, if you make it sound exciting.
Oh no, it was good. My book club, the Readers in the Rue Morgue, held a charity book stall in Botanic Gardens to raise money for Nexus NI, who are a brilliant sexual trauma charity, and the Rainbow Project NI, which are very supportive of the LGBTQ plus community. We managed to raise more than I thought, so pretty happy with how it went.
Yeah, you still haven't tallied the money. It's been a week, Victoria.
I'm slow, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We will have no judgment here. And any events Readers from the Morgue want to talk about? Do you want to talk about your book club? Because I don't think we've really ever talked about that. Do you want to talk a little bit about, and just if any of our listeners maybe want to join up and listen in? Or not listen in, but not so much join up. If any of our listeners want to get involved?
Yeah, we're quite a welcoming group. We meet on the second Thursday of
Don't let me in, listeners.
Essentially, the ethos of the club is we're all horror fans, and none of us really had someone to talk to about horror. And that was kind of my goal. It was to bring people together and read horror together and not feel weird about it. And it's been going for over a year now, and it's really, really fun. So if you're into horror, you're more than welcome to join us.
Yeah, you can also listen to the BanterFlix podcast and get your horror fix. But, say no more. Not that I'm bitter. Anytime I ever come down, hey guys, let's talk about this horror. It's a book club. It's not a horror movie club. So would you kindly just fuck off? And you're like, all right, Jesus, what happened to you, resident Disney queen? But no, say no more. And we're talking about, you also do film screenings. Any events lined up?
Yes, we do.
Why am I helping you? I don't mean why am I helping you, but why am I having to remember your itinerary better than you are?
Because I have a head like a sieve, Jim, you know this.
Okay.
We're hoping to do something around Halloween, but nothing set in stone yet. We have done a few screenings this year, again, raising money for some brilliant charities. We raised money for Bowel Cancer UK, we raised money for Metal for Life NI, which is a mental health charity for heavy metal fans. And that seemed to go very well. The screenings are always good crack, so if I do have something in the pipeline, I will let you know.
And where can people find out about any upcoming events with Readers from the Morgue?
If you follow us on Instagram, so at Readers in the Rue Morgue, even if you follow myself, I'm on Instagram at @1_open book. You can probably find me through BanterFlix's pipeline anyway, so yeah, if you're interested, please feel free to follow us, reach out to me, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, but just don't stop you in the street. Okay? Just don't stop you randomly in the street and go, hey, aren't you that girl? Aren't you that person? Isn't that the thing? When's the next event happening? It's like, no, just go on social media. Just go on social media and talk to me. Anyway, I jest and I say they are a lovely group. And yes, they have said I can come down as long as I don't talk and sit 5 feet away from them and look the other way. But no, we're that's not what we're here to talk about. But I don't think we've ever actually given you the opportunity to talk about that. So we have to right that wrong, Victoria. And as I've said to everybody as we start this podcast up again, it's great to be back in a studio. We're not recording via Zoom, so we don't have to kind of deal with lag issues, dropouts. And this does explain why we are recording this episode now, because we haven't recorded an episode of We Need to Talk About Disney since Christmas, since our Christmas special.
Yeah, right enough.
Because we may or may not have already recorded an episode about the film we're going to talk about this week. And I may or may not have had a problem with my Zoom account and therefore lost the aforementioned recording, which featured your lovely self, because you are co-curating this series of podcasts, and the lovely Therese Ray, one half of BanterFlix's Sleuth Sisters, and the co-host, I don't know what way they work that, the co-host of Crime Scene to Screen. We had Therese Ray on that, and I may have lost that recording. Now, this is not the first time that we have had to re-record an episode of Disney. This is not the first time we've had to re-record an episode of this series due to Zoom issues. So this is why it's good to be in a studio. So any problems that occur between now and this episode going out will purely be down to my fuck-ups. So hopefully that will not happen. So it's great to have you in the studio, Victoria. We are going to be talking about the Black Cauldron this week, and we're also going to be talking about Grease, because that was Joe McElroy's pick of the streams last week. We have your pick of the streams as well. Listeners, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Victoria may or may not have forgotten about this aspect of the podcast, and as we record right now, may or may not be frantically looking on UK streaming sites, legal streaming sites. I can in fact kind of confirm that is actually happening right now, as Victoria is looking for something. But we won't judge. This is not a judgment-free zone.
We have full transparency here at BanterFlix.
Yes.
I completely forgot.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, I'm just very, very busy doing other things, and rightfully so. And we will also have the lovely Sarah McDowell, who's going to be reviewing the Six musical, which has been at the Grand Opera House. She's going to be reviewing that for us in a little bit. So it's a packed show, as always. So I think we will move on and get stuck into some Disney-themed movie news. So, Victoria, Disney movie news. I know there's a couple of things that we both kind of had found and unearthed that we wanted to talk about. Disney own a lot of things, so we could kind of come into the MCU at this point. We haven't really discussed this on this new series of the pod, but I thought since we'll have you on, and since you are our resident Disney queen, that I thought it would be a nice chance to talk a little bit about Pat Carroll, who sadly passed away a couple of weeks ago. And whilst you may or may not be familiar with that name, Disney fans will know her. I know Disney do reuse voice artists, so she may have featured on more than just The Little Mermaid, but most viewers, I would imagine, would know her as Ursula from The Little Mermaid. So you have done I got this wrong earlier on, was it your PhD, your master's?
My master's.
Your master's. You did your master's on Disney. That is why you are our resident Disney queen. Is it annoying yet?
It's getting there.
Yeah, it's getting annoying. Everybody's like, just stop it, Jim. Stop trying to be hyper and try to be fun and pretend.
Nod politely, listeners.
Yeah, just stop trying to be young and trendy and cool. You're fucking 40 this year, Jim. Just get on with it. I'll accept it. Right. Okay. So, yes, you did your master's.
Yes.
You did your master's on Disney. And I know you mentioned within that, you mentioned the character of Ursula. So I thought it would be a nice place to start a little bit about Pat Carroll, what she brought to that role, the character of Ursula, and just your general thoughts. Because as I said, she may have appeared in other Disney movies other than The Little Mermaid.
Well, Pat Carroll, to be fair to her, she lived in 95. She did very, very well. She didn't actually appear in any Disney film until The Little Mermaid, and then only after that she appeared as Ursula in a running kind of commitment. She did Ursula for The House of Mouse and any other kind of Disney specials that featured that character. But considering she only played one character, she made quite a mark. I mean, Ursula is one of the most iconic Disney villains ever, and it's purely down to her performance. I know for Ursula, when the Disney production team were kind of putting together the character, they initially wanted her to be like Bea Arthur from Golden Girls and Joan Collins' character from Dynasty. They wanted it to be a very soap opera-y thing. Pat Carroll was not their first choice, but when she came in and did her audition, they were like, this is Ursula, we can't not use Pat. So Pat kind of co-created Ursula with the Disney production design team and based the look and the behaviours of the character off of the very famous drag queen Divine, who was a good friend of our favourite weirdo director John Waters. And I think that is such a good way to characterise Ursula, because her main song, it's essentially calling out all these tropes about performing femininity and what it means to be a woman while convincing Ariel to give her her voice. But I genuinely don't think anybody but Pat Carroll could have pulled that off in the same way. Ursula is just such a fantastic villain, and she's so funny, and she's so sassy, and she's just, I love her. If you couldn't tell that, I love her.
Yes, we definitely can. You've got a lot of passion as you talk about that. I mean, I am a Little Mermaid fan. I mean, I am not as big a Disney fan as you. We've talked about this before. I was a young boy once, and I used to say some of those Disney movies, I said, if it features a girl, those are for girls. I don't want those now. So I'm a latecomer. I mean, you've converted me to the likes of Mulan and things like that. I don't know if you'll convert me to the Black Cauldron, but more on that in just a moment, listeners. But we're going to take a little break from Disney for now, although they may or may not own the rights to that musical. Email us in, listeners, if you know if Disney own the rights to the Six musical. Sarah McDowell will probably know, but she's been to see the performance at the Grand Opera House, not once, but twice, Victoria. In this cost of living crisis, she's going to see a musical twice. I don't know. I'm starting to doubt this cost of living crisis exists. But Sarah McDowell went to see the musical at the Grand Opera House, so we thought we would get her to record us a little review. And here it is.
Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. And tonight, Royal Albert Hall, we
the glories and the disgraces.
I'm done, 'cause all this time I've just wanted words in a stupid rush. So I picked up a pen and a microphone. History's about to get overthrown.
Hi, this is Sarah, a musical theatre nerd and self-confessed superfan of Six the Musical, which recently had its second run at the Grand Opera House here in Belfast. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. From Tudor queens to pop princesses, the six wives of Henry VIII take to the mic to tell their tales, remixing 500 years of historical heartbreak into an 80-minute celebration of 21st century girl power. This reimagining of the lives of the famous queens was conceived and written by Toby Marlow and Lucy Moss as part of their Musical Theatre Society at Cambridge University in 2017. It was then taken to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and in 2019 found its first home at the Arts Theatre in London for an initial run of 16 weeks. 4 years later, and the show is now in its third London venue, with additional productions worldwide, including the UK tour, Australia and New Zealand tour, multiple cruise ship residencies, 2 American tours, an upcoming Amsterdam show, and not forgetting the Broadway production. Marlow and Moss, along with costume designer Gabriella Slade, would not have believed that by 2022 they would have been Tony Award winners, one of the biggest achievements in musical theatre. The premise of Six is that the Queens are holding a concert, but haven't yet decided who should lead the band. They then request the audience's help to decide who it should be. Their only requirement? That the leader be the Queen who had the worst time with King Henry. First up is Catherine of Aragon, played on this tour by Chloe Hart, whose song No Way is influenced by the styles of Beyoncé and Jennifer Lopez. Chloe is a seasoned West End performer who has the confidence and charisma to not only command the stage, but bring the audience along with her. Powerful vocals and some comedic moments meant she was a strong way to open the contest, so much so that she herself thought that she had won after only one song. Anne Boleyn has the social media presence in the show, and I think that her song Don't Lose Your Head is probably the most well-known song due to its popularity online. Her Lily Allen, Avril Lavigne vibes come across as the cheeky one in the group, and Jennifer Caldwell played this part to perfection. She's made the part her own after having been an alternate on the previous tour, and the audience absolutely appreciated her comedic timing and a reverence towards the other queens. Casey Al-Shaksi plays the Adele-inspired Jane Seymour, aka the only one he truly loved. Her rendition of the ballad Heart of Stone silenced the entire opera house. She created a moment of complete vulnerability, and her superb acting ability shone through when recounting how her son would have to grow up without her. After having seen the part played by 2 other actresses on the West End in previous tour, I must admit that Casey's was my favourite portrayal so far. Anna of Cleves was played by the wonderful Jessica Niles, who was in her 3rd stint in the part, after being in the Norwegian Cruise Line's breakaway cast. Her energy during the solo song Get Down, loosely inspired by the likes of Rihanna and Lorde, was the perfect up-tempo number to continue the competition. A word to the wise, however. If you ever sit in the front row to see Six, you can be, and probably will be, picked on by Cleves to get up and dance. I can attest to this, as I was the person Jessica chose to get up and dance in front of a full house. A moment I will never forget, or live down. Catherine Howard, the Britney Spears Ariana Grande-inspired queen, was played by Scottish actress Lisa Tully, an alternate who was drafted in for every Northern Ireland show. Lisa is a great example of a queen who's allowed to use her own accent throughout the show, and especially in her song All You Wanna Do. Toby Marlow and Lucy Moss excelled in their writing, as the song descends into a darker place each time the chorus is sung, despite the lyrics sounding very innocent and childlike. I think this is the mark of a good lyricist, and Lisa understood this and conveyed it through an absolutely heartbreaking performance. And finally, the only non-UK member of the cast was Alana Robinson, a resident of Washington DC who played the part of Catherine Parr, the final surviving queen who was with Henry until his death. Her solo, I Don't Need Your Love, is very Alicia Keys inspired, with a heavy R&B style, which was perfect for the mood of the finale. It's not only empowering, but ends up ultimately uniting the queens against the power of Henry and his court. It makes each queen realise that her strength is in her individuality, not in the fact that they were married to the same man. There are also several group songs in the show, Ex-Wives and Six, where the cast excel in their harmonies and choreography, and the unexpected House of Holbein, which is always such a joy to watch. Rather than a traditional finale, the queens perform a concert-style Mega Six, in which they actively encourage the audience to film and share. By this time, the entire audience were on their feet, joining in with the chorus, and I could tell that there were quite a few fans who knew every word. I have to give a genuine shout-out to every member of the 2022 UK tour cast, including alternates Grace Melville, Natalie Pilkington, and Harriet Kaplan-Dean, who perform at some scheduled shows, but who can also be called on for last-minute performances. I love seeing them get their time to shine, and always feel so lucky to see the alternates getting the appreciation they deserve. Another huge mention goes to the ladies in waiting, otherwise known as the band. They were outstanding, and it's always encouraging to see the welcome they receive from Belfast audiences. If you missed the show this time around, I'm happy to inform you that the Queens will be returning to the Grand Opera House next Easter from the 11th to the 15th of April. Tickets are now on sale and going extremely fast. Overall, I would say this is a must-see show for theatre fans, music fans, history buffs, and everyone in between. Because if you think you know the rhyme, think again.
So that's Sarah McDowell's review of Six. Are you intrigued by that musical, Brian?
I mean, I'm very intrigued. Even the fact that she has been to see it twice, that's a big selling point, I think.
Yeah, I'm tempted to go see. I'm tempted to give it a viewing, and yeah, as I said, I just don't know. BanterFlix, I don't know if I have the money. I have to wait. Maybe sit in the gods. Might be able to sit in the gods. If anyone wants to go half seas with me, you see the first half, I'll see the second half. That's the way we shall work it. But yes, so thank you very much, Sarah, for recording that review, and we're going to stick with some Disney themed movie news. I guess just a couple of things we could talk about. You excited about all the kind of recent announcements from Disney about where they're going to go with the Avengers? I don't really know. We've talked about this, I think. Where do you lie on kind of all the kind of MCU stuff?
See, to be perfectly honest, I was very, very into Marvel when I was in school, when it was like peak first Iron Man, Captain America, Winter Soldier.
Makes me feel so old.
I'm sorry, Jim.
After me earlier on kind of trying to be cool, young and hip, and accepting
you're
that I'm 40.
It's okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I think I lost interest somewhere when I left school, so even when Infinity War and Endgame came out, I didn't really care that much, and especially with, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it yet, with the end of Infinity War, I kind of knew most of the characters would come back, if not all of them, so I didn't get that big emotional punch that most people got. And with the new phase, I'm optimistic, but I'm kind of keeping my guard up. I'm not as excited. I wish I was more excited than I am.
Are you, I don't know, are you trying to even keep up? Because I think we've talked to you about WandaVision. Have you watched WandaVision?
WandaVision was fantastic. WandaVision and Loki.
Yeah, I mean, Loki was kind of Marvel does Doctor Who, which I enjoyed. I mean, I love Doctor Who. We talked about Doctor Who as well. You've kind of faded away from Doctor Who a little bit.
A little bit. I think everyone has their favourite Doctor. Mine is my lovely David. He appears to be shooting something very special for us, if social media is to be believed. I have moved away from Doctor Who, but I still have a lot of love for it, so I think that probably influenced me liking Loki so much.
Yeah, because I know we talked about this last week with Joe. We have She-Hulk, which is now out, and She-Hulk is kind of bringing an end to the Phase 4 stuff on Disney+. We have Black Panther, which is out later this year. I mean, the trailer for that really did get me in the feels. I'm struggling with the MCU stuff. If I'm honest, I think there's just too much. I've said it, but I said this many years ago. I wrote a piece on the website when I used to write stuff. Remember those days? And I wrote a piece about suffering from comic book movie fatigue. And I feel like I just could rewrite that now and put it back up, because it's kind of where I'm feeling now. There's so much content. We're saturated by it. And now the fact that you have to watch so much to be able to keep abreast of things. I know there's going to be 2 Avenger movies coming up, but I don't know. The excitement level isn't what it once was for me. But you mentioned this before the recording. I know we touched on this very briefly in the end of last week's recording with Joe, but Disney Plus has now overtaken Netflix for subscribers. I'm both surprised and not surprised by that, but I am surprised by how quickly that has happened. We think about how long Netflix has been going. I know there's been a lot of stuff in the news about Netflix has been losing subscribers, quite a few, like a couple of million, 100 million in the last couple of months, just with they've put down to this cost of living crisis, low as we've already alluded to. If Sarah McDowell can go see 6 twice, she might even go see it a 3rd time. Who possibly knows? If she can go to see that 3 times, she can pay it for Netflix for 1 month. But are you surprised by how quickly Disney have put their stamp on within the streaming wars, which sounds like it should be in the MCU, but it's not?
I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'm surprised that I'm not. Like, when it was just Disney on its own, it was different, because even my dad thought it was all just cartoons for kids until we showed him history documentaries. I think bringing in other channels definitely helped them get a much wider audience. But I think it has surpassed Netflix so quickly. Like, Netflix has been around for 10 years, probably longer. And yes, Netflix are having some issues with their content, their prices, cracking down on sharing accounts and stuff. But I didn't think people would have jumped ship that quickly and gone to Disney of all places. Like, I would have thought Amazon would have been the place to go, but apparently it's Disney.
Yeah, but Amazon, you still get your free shopping. That's what Amazon, that's that trump card that Amazon will always have. It's like, come and get some Prime with us. And you're like, all right, don't really know. It's just the boys. That's really all I want. Well, it's like, free next day delivery. You've done it again, Howard. You've done it again. I'm on board. And you've also got Paramount Plus now as well. Of course, loads of streaming sites are available. Shudder, which I've dabbled with, and every so often I do for about 2-3 months, and then I go, no, I can't commit. It's like, then I come back, I'm like that really bad passive-aggressive boyfriend, or that guy in Shudder's life who kind of comes in and out, and it's like Shudder's just getting over me, it's moved on, it's like, yeah, I'm ready to commit again. And then after like 2 months, no, I'm not ready. No, it's not you, it's me. I want to go watch Star Trek on Paramount Plus instead. You don't have Star Trek, Shudder. Sorry. You've only got documentaries. I've watched them already. Goodbye. And then maybe about 3 months' time, Joe McElroy or you or someone will recommend something only available on Shudder. And you're like, all right, then I'll give it a go. Shudder's ready to be hurt all over again. I don't know where I went with that tangent. But anyway, so I think we will move on from that before I go really weird and start rating kind of all the streaming services in like a kind of friend style, Ross and Rachel kind of ex-girlfriends kind of thing. But let's not go down. Let's not pull on that weird thread. Let's move on and discuss the main movie this week, and that is the 1986 animated feature, The Black Cauldron. It's directed by Ted Berman and Richard Rich, if I'm correct on that one. Richard Rich, what a name. So good they almost named him twice. This has a 55% rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes, funny enough, and a 48% audience score. We're going to be talking about it, and we'll be talking about this as part of our continued delve into the dark era of Disney's animated back catalogue. But before you hear us sharing our thoughts, let's play a clip.
Is that you, Hen? Look what I've got. Come on out. Here's a lovely
Oh, great prince. Give poor starving Gertie munchings and crunchings. Nice apple. Good prince. Good apple. Oh boy, what a juicy apple.
Hey, no you don't. I didn't give you that apple. You took it.
Ow!
Hey, hold on, you hairy little thief. Come back with my apple. If you don't give it back, you'll be sorry.
So that's a clip of The Black Cauldron. Resident Disney Queen, over to you. Give our listeners a bit of a taste of what it's all about.
So, The Black Cauldron was Disney's 25th feature animation. It was based off It was based off Welsh mythology. It follows a young boy named Taran who feels very trapped on this pig farm. He's having to do all these chores that he can't be bothered doing. He wants to go out and make his mark on the world, but he just doesn't know how to do that. And he discovers that the adorable little pig, Henwin, that he looks after is actually a magic pig, because Disney. And a very scary horned king, played by the amazing and sadly passed John Hurt, wants this pig to help him take over the world. He needs this pig to show him how to tactfully plan his ambushes, how to see where people are so he can win. That's what he wants. So Taran kind of gets his wish, but not in the way he thought he would, and he goes on a fabulous adventure to rescue Henrin and make sure that the Horned King doesn't get his wishes.
Wonderfully done, Brian. And then this is the next part then, when I throw back to yourself straight away and say, can you give a little bit of insight into this in terms of Disney and kind of why this is, before we kind of discuss specifically the film itself, where I can kind of throw in with much more confidence, but kind of a little bit about its place within the history of Disney's animated back catalogue?
So, the Black Cauldron's a bit of a strange one. The focus of this series is looking at the strange period in Disney in between the passing of Walt Disney and his brother Roy, and Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg coming in the late 80s and kind of reigniting Disney and bringing it back to its roots and what it was. The Disney studio were very lost in this quote-unquote dark age, and there was a lot of disagreements, there was a lot of tension between animators. The Black Cauldron is a strange one because two of the original 9 old men, they were the original animators who had been with Disney since Snow White, Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas, they really, really believed in the Black Cauldron. They thought it could be as good as Snow White. They thought it had this timelessness to it. Whereas the other people in the art department wanted it to be more like Sleeping Beauty. So more of a gothic drama, kind of, something very medieval and traditional. So there was a lot of tension between the storyboarders, the artists, the writers, even the actors. So already going in, it wasn't a good start. And the Horned King himself, if you haven't seen the Black Cauldron, he is very, very scary. And when they were doing test screenings, they ultimately decided that the film was going to have to be in PG, and it was the first Disney animated film to be PG. So obviously parents with young kids kind of thought, this is going to be too dark. As soon as you see that Disney logo, that's meant to be an indication of, this is kid friendly, this is family friendly, I can take my kids into this, no problem. Most parents went into this and came out with very either bored kids or very traumatized kids. There seemed to be no consensus. It's a very The Black Cauldron's a very like cult favorite among Disney fans. I hadn't heard of it growing up. It was my friend in secondary school that introduced me to it. I had never heard of it, which is mad considering we had every other VHS of Disney's back catalogue. I had never even heard of The Black Cauldron, never mind seen it. It is a very contentious, strange little film in the Disney vault.
Okay, so that's perfectly put, and it sets us up then to discuss the film. So like you, I had never seen this before until we started to talk about it, started to talk about this series. I had heard about it. I'd actually, if I'm honest, I thought it was out much earlier within Disney's back catalogue than where we eventually find it in 1986. And it's a weird. This is a weird recording for me because we've talked about this film twice. As I said, there was a Zoom recording that sadly is no more, and I watched it for that. And I think at the time I was quite downbeat on it because I didn't find it engaging. And I think it's that thing of when you come into particularly a studio like Disney and you look at these older releases, there are certain titles you have. I've talked about it in the past. The Rescuers, where you have that nostalgia and it's there. And I think there's so many of the heavy hitters from the early stage of Disney that we've talked about in the past, that for a lot of people, they are there because parents, they were fans of the series. They were fans of Disney Studios. They were fans of Disney's output. So, of course, you get like Snow White, Cinderella. They have that nostalgia. So that's then passed on. Here you see, I think, a time in Disney's back catalogue where they're not as sure in what they want to do. And that's why you look at the output around this time. Like I was just making a quick note. So the title that predates this was The Fox and the Hound, the saddest Disney movie of all time. And then the title that then comes after this is The Great Mouse Detective, which, and it's, I know what that sounds like, doesn't it? But when you look at those three films, they're three very different styles of features. I liked with reservation The Fox and the Hound. I don't think it's as depressing as people do, but I think it is a film that does feel pulled in too many directions. And this is very much the case with The Black Cauldron, although watching it a second time, having already watched it, things that might have annoyed me, the little kind of niggly things, like I was not a fan of Taron, the voice actor, Grant Bardsley, I think. I did not like his voice. Those are niggly things for me. I know. I find it weird that, you know, we had a best friend that was a pig. I find it kind of even weirder when, you know, his furry sidekick, Gurgi, and you're like, going, Gurgi, did Andy Serkis watch this movie? He got to have watched this movie. There's no way he couldn't have watched this movie to have some inspiration for Smeagol and Gollum. I don't know. I think it's been debated. I think he has never come out collectively and said yes or no. Me can feel free to correct me, Brown, but
not as far as I'm aware. But I would be very, very surprised if he didn't.
It's uncanny.
It's incredible.
From the minute that character just rocks up on screen, steals an apple, and you go, right, that's Gollum. That is Gollum. And it is... Have you ever seen the Lord of the Rings animation that was out? Again, it was a bit like... I know Joe and I were talking last week about Dante's Peak, about films that just run out of money. And like that was meant to be this great big animation. It was going to be 3 titles, and they ran out of money. The first one didn't make enough, so they never really finished it. So it's like all this great first half of the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, and it's a great first half, and then it's like, oh, you can see, right, they've lost money, so they like it becomes an abridged version. Having never read, I think it's Lloyd Alexander is the writer of the books. This does feel like it's a very abridged version, because we have the Horned King, and then the Horned King's there, and then it kind of switches to, isn't it, the witches?
Yeah.
There's witches near there, and it does feel like they have abridged. And I don't know if it's from one book or they've just chopped together a couple of books. I don't know. Maybe you know more about that. Watching it a second time, I don't have as many reservations on it. I still think that it's of the Disney films we've watched so far as part of this retrospective, and it feels like a lifetime ago when we were talking about these before. It feels like a studio very much in flux, trying to find a direction, trying to find the tone that they want. And you've also got in the time, like to Tim Burton, would have been coming into... I think Tim Burton worked on this.
He did indeed. He worked on Fox and the Hound and the Black Cauldron.
He definitely worked on the trees. The trees in this are so
very Tim Burton.
They're very Tim Burton trees, without a doubt. But you look at that from an animated point of view, from a narrative point of view, it looks like a studio that's in flux. And when you look at the output at the time, like we've talked about this from memory, we started this, we have like the stuff like the Aristocrats. No, the oh, for God.
You tried.
I tried. I got it wrong. It's been a while.
So confident.
I was so close. I was so confident because I was like, if I slow this down, I'll say it right. It's like the Aristocats. We had the Aristocats, and then we had like the Robin Hood. Very kid-friendly. Like, I've talked about this with you, that this time within Disney's output is very much gateway drug material. It's like, yeah, stick them in front of Robin Hood. There's not that much kind of scary going on. There's the Aristocats. They might want to know why a horse wants to be a cat, but let's not go back. See previous podcast about Jim's kind of 2-hour rant about that. But you start to see with the Fox and the Hound, you start to see, particularly with the Black Cauldron, like there's stuff with is it the Cauldron Born they refer to as
yes.
the, like that's even as more terrifying than the stuff from Fantasia.
It is very, very scary. It kind of reminded me of the 6th Harry Potter film when Harry and Dumbledore have to go and drink that potion that Voldemort's hidden the locket in, and those creatures from the sea kind of rise up. It's horrifying. It is not kid friendly.
No, it's tough. And then there's quite a bit of cleavage on the old witches. I mean, I'm just speaking as sleazy 40-year-old guy here, but you're like, really? This is meant to be for kids?
There's a lot of unnecessary cleavage.
There's a lot of unnecessary cleavage, and that's not something I find myself saying often. As you well know, Brian, I am not known for saying, look, sorry, love, that is unnecessary cleavage. All right? It's unnecessary. With my kind of head on of thinking, if I was a parent with my kids, it's like, Jesus. I don't know why that person just became really culty. Like, Jesus, queer bit of cleavage in this. That's not really appropriate. I think we might have to go watch something else instead of this. But, I know I'm kind of doing my usual kind of rambly, like, Jim, would you fuck up kind of way. But you know what I mean.
There is an extensive use of cleavage. There's a bit, is it Gurgi gets transformed into a frog?
Yeah.
Somebody gets transformed into a frog, and there is a lot of focus on one witch in particular because the frog gets stuck in her cleavage, and the sequence just goes on.
Too long.
It's funny initially, and then, like Jim says, it just goes on a bit too long, and you're like, this is uncomfortable. This is unnecessary.
So there's a couple of questions in my typical way I want to kind of roll back and ask. So you didn't watch this when you were younger. I have said this, there's a possibility, and I know you've mentioned you had a couple of friends that did watch it when they were younger. Were they coming at it from a very passionate point of view in the fact that they loved it, or were they kind of going like, yeah, Black Cauldron, it's a bit shite, mate?
No, the only friend I have that knew what the Black Cauldron was.
Oh, only friend you have.
You're a cheeky bastard.
It's just the way you said it. It's like,
I mean, the only friend who had seen
I
it.
have.
The only friend.
I'm so Hermione from Harry Potter.
You're terrible. The only friend I had who had seen the film, I had other friends.
There we go.
She was very, very passionate about it. Part of the reason that we became friends and that we bonded was that we both loved The Prince of Egypt and Anastasia and Tim
Never
Burton
seen
films.
them.
You've never seen Anastasia and The Prince
No.
of Egypt? Okay, that's adding to our BanterFlix podcast list.
Okay.
That's how we bonded, and I remember her asking me something about Gurgi, and I was like, who is Gurgi?
He's
And
just
she
like Gollum in Lord of the Rings.
A hairy Gollum. She looked so shocked. She was genuinely confused as to why I had never seen the Black Cauldron.
Is that when she stopped being your friend?
No. But she was really, really passionate about it. She loved it. Like, she would recommend it.
Because the only reason why I say it is I think if it hit me at the right time, although it's strange saying that because you were saying either kids were either terrified or bored. I think if you're terrified by the Black Cauldron, you'd probably end up loving it. Because, I mean, I've talked ad nauseum in this podcast about how I was terrified to the point of having to leave the cinema at a viewing of Ghostbusters 2 many years ago. And I love that film. And it's not, people love Ghostbusters, and yeah, there's some people kind of take it a bit too far and kind of ruin the fun for everybody else and kind of bring it into a bit of kind of like Ghostbusters can't be women and all that kind of stuff. Wankers. I love Ghostbusters too, and it's because of the fact I have that memory of the fact I was scared shitless as a child. It's maybe I don't think I'm alone in that. When something absolutely terrifies you, it's like, right, I want to go back and I want to have that feeling again. Or you want to watch and you go, really? This scared me. This terrified me. It's like, oh, I forget the name of the film. Here's the next question for people to email in. It's with Harvey Keitel, Kirk Douglas, and there's a really crap robot in that film. Saturn. It's something Saturn. Email in and tell us what it is. But the robot in that terrified me to the point where I used to have nightmares about that robot for years when I was younger. That like people's heads would be getting pulled off and this robot would be underneath and you'd just be like, Jesus. It's like, where the fuck was my mind when I was younger? But I'm rambling, but I'm just simply saying, if I got this at the right time, I think I would love this film. And I think it's interesting that you and I are watching it now. Like, so when did you watch? Roughly what age would you be?
24, 25.
Okay, I don't know if you're that age. I don't know with Disney whether that kind of same nostalgia factor and that same. I don't know. Maybe there's Disney stuff you've watched more recently that you've absolutely fallen in love with.
That is the case. That was in mind because before we did this series, I had never seen The Rescuers, and I knew that was one of your favourites.
Ever.
And I kind of went in with an open mind because I knew you loved the film, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It's in my top 10 now. So if I can have that reaction to The Rescuers and have this reaction to the Black Cauldron, because I was around the same age when I watched The Rescuers, I don't know how big of a role nostalgia or your age plays.
It's an interesting, in my typical rambly way, I make a really good point. You just make it much more coherent, and that's why we're a good team in this podcast, Brian. You come at it from a serious point of view. I come from it from a 2-hour discussion on why a horse wants to be a cat, or why does a mouse need an oversized human-sized coin?
With the coin again.
Yeah, these are the things that, because there's none of this in the Black Cauldron. Okay, a little bit kind of, how did they ever discover that the pig was able to have those powers? Like, was just like, because it sounded like there's a specific like chant or kind of,
yeah, there's a kind of ritual.
There's a
have
ritual.
to do, so.
How did they discover that pig had that power?
It's a good question, Jim.
That's
email in if you know.
Email us in. How did they discover the pig in the Black Cauldron had that ability to be able to tell the future, and at no point did anyone go, that'll do, pig, that'll do, because of course that film was released afterwards. Yes, I'm rambling. So I find this a strange film. There's little bits of it I love. There's little bits of it I find really boring, and there's other little bits of it I find a little bit distracting due to the cleavage situation, but let's not go there. Watching it a second time, having watched it the first time for the previous pod that sadly wasn't, and watching it, I didn't find it as boring the second time round. I enjoyed it much more. I just find it's like the Horn King, who I don't think is as big a role in the books as he is within this. Like, there's a certain point where he's the big bad. There's the birthing of the Cauldron Born, which is terrifying. It is creepy. And then it kind of moves on from that, and then you have the witches, and then there's a little sequence at the end. It does pull on my little heart. I'm not dead inside. I might be nearly 40, but I'm still a human being. And yeah, you know, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I suppose when we're looking at these films, because you've kind of talked about its context within their back catalogue, Brian, would you recommend it? Because I know the thing we've started to do with this pod is kind of at the end of every movie review, so, but is it good, mate? So that's the kind of key thing we're asking now. But I suppose someone who has Disney Plus now and is scrolling through all those things, they can go, oh, there's a Black Cauldron, but we'll watch that, or will we watch Prey? I don't know, maybe, I don't know. Would you recommend, I don't know why a parent would be deciding to choose between Prey and Black Cauldron.
Is this parent Joe McElroy?
This parent is Joe McElroy. This is parenting done correctly. But would you say to someone listening now, who's a parent, or if not, has never seen it, is it worthwhile, beyond knowing kind of the fact that it's a film that was being pulled in so many directions, both on screen and off screen, and I think there's parts where it's just been cut It's been cut with a chainsaw and it doesn't work. There's like moments where the score just don't make. And I had this mentioned down. We have Elmer Bernstein doing the score. And there's times, I wish through the copyright issues, I don't think I can. But there's moments from that score where it's just the score from Ghostbusters. And this was out in 86. I think Ghostbusters was in...
84?
So this was out, I think Elmer Bernstein just was like, yeah, just reuse this. Because it is, there is times it is so Ghostbusters when you're listening. It's literally almost like for like, I'd love to be able, I'm sure there's somewhere on YouTube where someone has like a kind of this little bit of score, that little bit of score. If this score wasn't done by Elmer Bernstein, someone would be going into court going, hang on, you ripped it off. It is uncanny. But coming back to, for no apparent reason, I went down a digression. Would you recommend it to, I'm using the term because it's Disney, I'm using the term kind of parents, but would you recommend it for someone to seek it out?
It is a hard question because it does have the creepy bits. I would be apprehensive depending on, like, parents know their kids better than anybody. They know what their kids can handle and what they can't, and kids themselves know more about what they can deal with than you think. Like, kids deserve a lot more credit in that respect, I think. But I think I'd recommend it just out of sheer curiosity, because I didn't go into this film blind. I knew a lot about the production, so I'm wondering, did that influence my experience of it? Maybe someone going into it blind would love it. So please, if you haven't seen it and you watch it with your kids or with your younger siblings or nieces or nephews, please email us and let us know what you think and what they think, because I would love to know. Okay,
and another thing, it's popped into my head. What do you think of Princess, I'm going to go for it, Alone Way?
Is it Elon?
It's Welsh.
It's a very Welsh
It's
name.
like the middle class Protestant that I am, approaching quite a few kind of Catholic names and going, no, your name is clearly Siobhan. Siobhan? No. It's written Siobhan. How are you spelling that, Kiva? No, that's not how that's spelled. But anyway, so I went down an offensive route to to quite a few of our listeners. But I'm going to say Princess Alone Way, because I find her she's both kind of strange, because when we were first introduced to her, she's quite strong, but she's a bit of a meh character within this.
Yeah, she doesn't make much of an impact. When you first meet her, Taran has been kidnapped, he's in a dungeon, and when you first meet her, she is escaping from her prison, and you're like, okay, this is a character I can get behind. She has agency, she's strong, she's intelligent. But after that, she kind of just fades into the background. She doesn't have a lot of agency, she doesn't really push the plot forward in any meaningful way. She's just kind of there. And maybe that was part of the cutting issue. Maybe she had a much bigger role before and it just doesn't come across on screen for the various reasons that we've talked about.
And sadly becomes just little more than a love interest. When have Disney ever been...
would never do that, Jim.
No, just the animated version of a manic pixie dream girl. But let's not pull on that thread. Look, Brian, we've talked quite a bit about it. Anything else from your notes or anything from what you can remember yourself and the lovely Therese Ray discussing when we may or may not have discussed this via Zoom?
I'm curious because a lot of the criticisms when the film came out from film critics was that the film was clearly ambitious but fell short. So I'd love to know if this film came out during the golden era, during the silver era, when Walt was still alive, or even if they had shelved it for a couple of more years and waited until Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg came in, would it have been better? That's something that kind of plays on my mind. Is it so disjointed and so strange a wee film because of when it was made?
Do you think Walt Disney... I mean, we talked about this with The Fox and the Hound, because I think that was a project Walt... Was it he was engaged or he liked, or am I thinking of Robin Hood?
Walt gave the green light for quite a lot of films before he died. A lot of the films that were made later on were stuff that had been shelved years and years ago. From
your knowledge, and I know I'm asking you off the top of your head, was he involved in any way with the Black Cauldron?
I honestly don't know.
That's a very honest of you. I thought you'd have just lied and just been like, yeah.
No, I told you full transparency, BanterFlix.
Yeah, his last words before he passed was, make the Black Cauldron. That's not going to make the cut because that's terrible. But I also like that as a joke. It's like his last words. I like that. It's like, make the Black Cauldron. It's like, it's Walt's
as he's dying of lung cancer, that was his last words.
Very last words. And then his second last was, don't shave the moustache. I don't know. Sorry, Walt. Sorry, family of the estate of Walt Disney. I don't know, because it's so on Disney-like. But yet, when you watch it, there are moments. I think I remember making this point at the time when we reviewed it. It does feel like a film that's being like, let's be brave and be bold, and then it just pulls back into quintessential Disney realms, and then you have terrifying dragons, and you've the cauldron.
I'm just thinking, because we talked about how there was a lot of tension between the artists and the animators. A lot of the animators left during this period, and one of them was Don Bluth, who went on to do The Land Before Time. I think, is it Five Goes West? I can never remember the name. I'm
going to resist the urge to kind of do.
I can see you smiling.
I really want to do An American Tale, A Five Goes West. I really want to do my 5-0, but I won't, because I'm in public.
Oh, you won't do it because you're a grown-up.
Yeah, 5-0, and it's just because anytime it pops up in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it makes me smile. But yes, Don Bluth did make An American Tale with Steven Spielberg.
If he worked on this, because it feels very.
I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he did. I think I remember. I think he left and then maybe came back to assist. Email in, listeners, because this is the way we do. We can't be bothered looking for internet facts now, so we just get you to do these things for us. So email in. Did Don Bluth work on the Black Cauldron? Anything else, Brian, before we move on to Greece? Because I know you're busting to talk about that.
No, I think we're good. I think the Black Cauldron, again, I would recommend watching it, but go in with an open mind. Like, don't take my word as gospel.
So my last end question, we're going to change this slightly because it's Disney themed. Is it good, Mickey?
Yeah. That wasn't a very confident but yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I think when I watched this the first time, I said, look, I think you can do without watching. I think it's worth a watch. I will say that, and within full transparency, having said that, the second time I rewatched this, I did fall asleep, but it was because of the heat last week. I was tired, I'd been up early, and then had to go back and rewatch it because I didn't want to miss Witch's boobs. And I enjoyed it a lot more. Not to say I loved it. I think a bit like you, it's all right. It's an all right Mickey. It's not a great one. But yes, so I know we're going to be moving on to Greece because that's our pick of the streams from last week. When we do reconvene on the next Disney-themed episode of the BanterFlix podcast, what will we be reviewing, Brian?
We will be reviewing The Great Mouse Detective, and I am very, very excited because it's another one I haven't seen. And I'm a massive Sherlock Holmes fan, so I'm surprised it took me this long to watch it. But yes, that's our next one.
Okay, we've that to look forward to. That will probably be in around a month's time. Thankfully, for anyone who listened to The Fox and the Hound many, many months ago, I was like, yeah, they'll get round to that episode in about a month. I was like, yes. So yes, things have been difficult and things are now getting to some sense of normality. So I can assure you, listeners, there will be another podcast. That's as far as I'm going to go on that. There will be another podcast at some point where we talk about a Disney movie. Right. Okay. So we're going to move on. And this week, our pick of the streams is Grease. The very lovely Joe McElroy picked this last week in honour of the sad news of the passing of Olivia Newton-John. But before Victoria and I share our thoughts on the film and possibly get a little bit musical, I don't know, let's play a clip of the film.
Hi, Sandy.
Oh, hi.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
That's good. Hey, Sandy, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time now.
And what about?
Well, about that night at the bonfire. I mean, the way I acted, that was terrible. I mean, it really was. I mean, it wasn't me. You gotta know that. I mean, it was me, of course, but it wasn't me. And you see, Sandy, I got this image, right? I got this.
Well, that's why I'm so glad that Tom's such a simple person.
Simple is right. Too bad his brains are in his bicep.
Jealous, are you?
Jealous? Oh, come on, Sandy. Don't make me laugh. Ha, ha, ha.
And what have you ever done?
Oh, come on. I can run circles around those jerks.
I'll believe that when I see it.
So that's a clip of Grease. So tell me about it, Stud. Are you a fan of the Grease musical, Brian?
Jim, I am a massive fucking fan of Grease. My mum, right?
I love the fact actually that you. I think that's the first. Is it the first? I know we've heard you curse in this pod before, but I don't think we've heard you. I don't think we've heard you ever curse on a Disney themed podcast.
I'm sorry, listeners. I try to. I am a terrible swearer, so I try to control myself. But since we're talking about Grease now, it's okay.
And since I swore quite a bit already.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
You look at me like that.
Yeah. It's surprising. It's just a kind of like, it's like I thought maybe you'd be like, yes, I am. But it's like, yeah, I fucking am. So you're a big Grease fan. I had actually watched this before Joe had picked it, because when I heard the news of Olivia Newton-John's passing, I wanted to watch Grease because I am a fan of Grease. I'm a big fucking fan of Grease too. Although I actually am a big fan of Grease too. If that makes sense. Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, it does make sense. I do like Grease too, just because I quite like Michelle Pfeiffer in that role. And I think the music is on a par with the first Grease film. I mentioned this last week briefly with Joe. Have you seen the stage play?
No, but I would love to.
Okay, because I'm intrigued. I really want to see the stage play. I think this is where we need to get Sarah McDowell on. She's probably seen it quite a few times. So when she's not seeing 6 for like the 6th time, maybe she'll have seen Grease. I'm assuming it will tour again at some point. But I would love to see how the stage play compares to the film. Because I've always made this point before. How when you can take something away from the stage and the limitations of what that does, what that allows you to do with the story. Like there's drag racing in this and Grease. I want to know how they do that on the stage. Do they do that on the stage? Is that just something that's just mentioned? Because I've never seen the stage play, I can't compare. And one of the things when I went to rewatch it, I was like, did Grease start as a movie and then evolve to the stage? Like, no, it was adapted. It was Barry Gibb wrote the music. It was adapted from the stage, so I'm intrigued to see what the stage play of this would be like. But yeah, I mean, I have such a soft spot for the film. Coming back to what we alluded to in the Disney section, where it's that rose-tinted nostalgia of watching something, and now watching it now with supposed adult eyes and seeing how much went over your head. I mean, I never really kind of picked up on the pregnancy angle with... Well, I was aware there was a pregnancy, but I mean, when I'm probably watching this as an 8-year-old, I'm probably more interested in kind of going, they're dancing, mommy, they're dancing, rather than kind of going...
Is that how they speak in Oma?
That's how they speak.
Dancing, mummy.
They're dancing, mother dearest. Oh, I wish I could dance like that. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. There was so much stuff kind of went over my head, kind of the Rizzo, where she thinks she's pregnant, and how people act towards her and react towards her when she finds out she may or may not be pregnant. And then in the end, it's like, I'm not pregnant. And they don't do a big song. Well, they kind of do a big song about it. They don't really do a big song about it. But I was surprised at how much this went over my head. And I was listening to someone the other day talk about it in relation to the passing of Olivia Newton-John. They kind of said, like, so 1978, 79, 78, this was out. The Troubles was at its worst here. People talk about films like Grease, and they talk about like Superman, about pure escapism, and that's what they loved about Grease. It was like, from all the doom and gloom here, they look at this kind of the cinema and the escapism that offers. So I can see why so many people are so passionate about Grease. You clearly are. So why is it you're so fucking passionate about Grease?
I really regret
And your mother's going to be
swearing
listening to this.
My mother is the reason that I am passionate about Grease. I've mentioned it before. On a Sunday, my mum would deep clean the house like Snow White and have music blasting.
Okay.
And some of the music that she would play would be from Grease. She would watch Grease all the time. It was Grease, Back to the Future, Top Gun, and Footloose were on
That's
in our
such an
house
eclectic
all the
mix.
time. I love it. It's because of my mum that I love those films.
Mm-hmm.
They do have that nostalgia appeal, I will admit. But there's just something about Grease that is so much fun. It's you can enjoy it when you're a kid and as an adult. There are bits that go over your head, as I pointed out to my sister earlier today. I didn't realise how dirty the song Grease Lightning is until I listened to it the other day, and there was
Pure filth.
Yeah, it really is pure filth. So many words and phrases that just went over my poor wee head.
That Tyrone person who was watching the Black Cauldron. There's some queer filth here. Wouldn't want to be talking about a girl, a big girl, in not kind of way. Hey, Jesus, no, you wouldn't be doing that. Hey, I said to Joe last week, I mean, Grease Lightning, when I think about it, it's like, could you imagine if that was the mechanics you had to go to? And you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, would you stop farting about. Stop coming down from the roof. Just fix the light in the car. That's all I wanted you to do. Please hurry up. Yeah, I will say this as well, and I have asked her, so I have, in full transparency, I've been authorized to reveal this story. My lovely wife was not emotionally prepared for the ending of Grease. Watching it so recently after the news about Olivia Newton-John, where they, for no apparent reason, fly off into the sky. And I do love, is it like the Family Guy joke where they're kind of like, it kind of cuts to like the alternative ending or the after credit scene. It's like, we're still flying. I think it's Stewie's with them. It's like, we're still flying. And even I, as someone who's not dead inside, I cry at the opening of an envelope, sometimes literally. But I find it kind of surprising kind of how affecting that could be, that sequence of watching Sandy after being literally having to change your whole persona for a man. Let's delve into that one, Brian.
Are you sure you want to do that?
Can't Danny just accept her as who she was?
The feminist inside me says that you should, but she's so badass in that last scene that it just, my feminism.
Literally having to be sewn into trousers.
She was sewn into them.
Yes. Are you
amazing?
Are you not surprised by that?
But she was so teeny tiny anyway. But that makes a lot of sense. They are very, very tight trousers.
Yes, they are. My lovely wife told me to bring up that point. I just want to clarify that.
You were given permission.
I was given permission to bring up that point. She did say to me, it's like, don't you know? It's like, I am aware of that fact. And she's like, you should bring it up. It's like, yeah, she literally was sewn into those trousers. When you watch it when you're younger, I think you kind of find yourself getting drawn to the leads, the likes of Danny, the likes of Sandy. And then when you get a little bit older, some people go, but Rizzo was really the coolest one. But now, I kind of love Frenchie. Not that I would ever want a remake of Grease. I know they're making a prequel, Summer Nights, about their first love, which is just pointless.
They're also doing one called The Rise of the Pink Ladies.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Right. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know about that. I did know that they were making a Summer Nights, a prequel movie. But if they were to remake Grease, I don't know if she would, but Lady Gaga would be perfect for Frenchie.
Oh my god. Oh my god, I would love that.
But then who do you kind of cast everywhere? Because you probably get like Zac Efron now as kind of Danny.
Yeah. I don't know what a new Grease would look like.
But then that age creep.
Vanessa Hudgens played, was it Sandy on stage?
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know.
But we also doing that big number with Frenchie, beauty school dropout. Peter Andre does that on stage now. And you're just like, I don't think that would work. I can see you're intrigued.
No, he doesn't really have the baritone for that. He's
not like, it's like again, if you're doing that, you'd have Michael Bublé popping up in that.
Yeah, he's meant to have a deep voice, because I did, in my research, find out that they wanted Elvis for that sequence.
Yeah.
But sadly, he passed before they could, but...
Wouldn't that have been... It's like the two things you'd love Elvis to have done. You would have loved to have been in this. I knew he was going to be in this, and then I also knew that he was meant to be starring alongside Barbara Streisand in A Star Is Born. And I knew that before the Elvis movie came out. I did know that before the movie came out because my mum told me, because my mum's a huge Elvis fan. And I think that would have been fucking amazing. I already had a few swears, but that would have been fucking amazing. And that just to see Elvis in that kind of role, and when you know the story of A Star Is Born, just how poignant that would have been. But let's not kind of let this descend into a kind of Elvis love fest. But yeah, I mean, that would have been a perfect bit of cat. Could you imagine just in that sequence, Elvis rocking up?
That would be incredible. Like, don't tell anyone. Just wait until people are in the cinema and just see the shock on people's faces.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
But you looked at me, so I don't know. Are you different? Because I find there's more. It's always in that thing with musicals in particular. There's bit part characters or side characters or smaller roles that you find yourself getting drawn to more and more. And I find myself, I just have this love for Frenchie.
We grew up loving Frenchie because she reminded us of a friend of my sister. She's just very bubbly and positive and friendly. But in our house, we were big fans of Rizzo, Kaniki, and Jan, and is it Pudsley? Mm-hmm. We loved them. Although,
who was your mum a fan of? I imagine your mum's a Rizzo.
I'd say she's a Rizzo.
Email in, Mrs. Brown. because I don't.
I'll have to ask her now because she's one of those people that just loves
text her right now. Text her right
You know
now.
what? I will.
Text her right now. This is hard hitting radio right now, listeners. We are going to find out from Mrs. Brown her favourite character and favourite song from Grease.
Speaking of songs, I'm only starting to appreciate it now, but when we were kids, we would always fast forward per Sandy's solo song.
Aww.
Because, like, you have the fun, look at me, I'm
Sandy
Sandra
D.
And then Sandy went and got all depressed over Danny, so we would just fast forward it.
And
I feel bad now because it's such a good song.
And for some apparent reason, she's looking down in a little kind of paddling pool, and John Travolta just looks up.
Danny appears, smiling.
He just looks up. She didn't need a pig. She didn't need a little pig, and she just looks up.
That's how good Olivia Newton-John was. She didn't need a pig.
And John Travolta just looking up, looking all kind of hot. He's a good. I mean, whereabout was this? Does this predate Saturday Night Fever?
I think so. I think Saturday Night Fever was 75.
Okay.
I think it was early to mid.
I think you're right because I think he was it Carrie was out before this. I think
Carrie was, I want to say 73, 74 because that was his first feature role, and then he got big for Saturday Night because of Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Fever, and then we have this, and then we have Staying Alive, which everyone always forgets is directed by Sylvester Stallone.
What?
Yeah, Sylvester Stallone directed
What?
I have blew your mind.
Please tell me someone else is like sitting with their jaw dropped. I did not know this.
Dear listeners, the sequel to Saturday Night Live was directed by, yes indeedy, Sylvester Stallone. I want you to sing it a little bit better, John. Don't know where that voice was going.
Terrible.
Okay, yeah, I'm not good for impersonations. So I'm trying to think, what else do you want? I mean, what I find interesting about Grease is that it still finds new fans. And I think there's still people. You're looking at me like you disagree.
No, I do agree with you. I think it's because each character is so unique, and because it's that high school setting, there's people that you can immediately identify with and people that you'll immediately hate.
Yeah. So who do you hate? Do you hate Danny?
Oh, no, I don't hate Danny. I love Danny. It's, what do you call her? The really preppy, pushy one that organises the... Is it Patty?
I will say Patty, yes.
Organises the prom. I know she's meant to do your head in, but to me, she's like Jenny 2.0 from Derry Girl. She's just the worst.
But thankfully it's not raining on prom night. Is that what the song? It's raining on prom night?
I think so.
Yeah. And then poor old John, he gets left at the drive-in. Alone at the drive-in. Stranded at the drive-in.
And there's a random dancing hot dog in the background, so you're not even paying attention to what he says.
Yeah, look, the thing about musicals is people just go from talking, like we are now, to full-on musical numbers where there'll be like three people who aren't connected to the narrative at all will pop in right now and start dancing on this table where we are now. And it's always weird, like in the ending of Grease, where there's just that little section where it just cuts to this group of people who are in the background, they're not really involved in the plot, and they're just there to dance. And you're just like, that was your one job. That was your one job. You mean you didn't even get a line? Well, you can maybe got a line. I think there's a few cast members are involved in it. But yeah, I mean, I think what I like about Grease is that it's not clean cut. We have flawed characters, rough around the edges. There's that flirtation with real life kind of hard-hitting subject matter. We've mentioned teen pregnancies and things like that. It's not like High School Musical where it's all very kind of preppy and upbeat. Everybody's so happy and people are sad in this.
Do you think part of that comes from it being set in the 50s and having like the greasers and the people that didn't really fit in? Everyone in High School Music, there's a whole bloody song about it where they have the status quo of you belong to this group and that's it. Whereas Grease doesn't really have that.
Yeah.
It is nice to see characters with flaws, characters going through actual stuff, like you said, with the pregnancy. And the scene where they're at the drive-in and Rizzo says, don't tell anyone, and by the time she reaches the end of the car park, everybody knows. It's such a high school thing.
And then it's also when you look at it kind of like the we have a response.
It was Rizzo. My mum loves
go.
Rizzo, and Grease Lightning is her favourite. I should have known that.
Yeah,
I was torn between that and the end.
That's okay. So your mum clearly has no issues with the double entendres.
Oh no, she thinks they're brilliant. That was one thing, because like you said, there's stuff that goes over your head when you were a kid. But my mum's not a prude in any sense of the word. She's quite open, I have a very vivid memory of me watching Hocus Pocus and asking her what a virgin was, and her just going, oh, that's someone who hasn't had sex before, and I just went, okay, because you do that when you're a kid. But if there was stuff in Grease that we didn't understand, she would explain it to us. Like, she explained to us the issue with the teenage pregnancy. She didn't just gloss over that, whereas I know some parents might have. She didn't really gloss over why Danny trying to feel Sandy up in the car when she didn't want it wasn't okay. So there was some stuff that in Grease that my mum kind of touched on and told us as kids, like, this is what you're not meant to do. But like you said, High School Musical doesn't have any of that. Disney wouldn't allow that.
No, it is very Disney. It is, well, it's owned by Disney and it's made by Disney, so of course it's going to be very Disney. Look, I think, you've said you've set your kind of cards out right at the start. You fucking love Grease. You do. I love it too, because I have always had a soft spot for a well-made, well-executed musical, and this is up there. So I think that's us for this episode. So all that's left for me to do now is, hopefully I've padded enough. I've given Victoria enough time to figure out what her pick of the stream is going to be for our guest next week. But before we hear that, let's play a clip.
You don't by any chance know the way through this labyrinth, do you?
Oh, me? Nah, I'm just a worm.
Oh.
Come inside and meet the missus.
No, thank you, but I have to solve this labyrinth. But there aren't any turns or any openings or anything. It just goes on and on and...
Well, you ain't looking right. It's full of openings. It's just you ain't seeing them.
Well, where are they?
There's one just across there. It's right in front of you.
No, there isn't.
Come inside and have a nice cup of tea.
But there isn't an opening.
Of course there is. You try walking through it. You'll see what I mean.
What?
Go on then.
That's just wall. There's no way through.
Things are not always what they seem in this place. So you can't take anything for granted.
So that's a clip of Victoria's pick for next week. Do you want to enlighten me, Victoria? What film will we be discussing?
I have decided, because it's on my own watch list, because I haven't watched it yet and it feels like a rite of passage, that whoever is on the pod next week will be watching Labyrinth.
Oh, okay. And what site is that available? I think that's on Netflix.
It is indeed on Netflix. I keep seeing clips for it. Must have just been recently added to Netflix because I keep seeing clips promoting it. That's why it's in my head. But yeah, I think it's available on most streaming platforms, but at least on Netflix it's free.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if it's free if you pay a monthly fee.
Oh, yeah. Or if you use your brother or sister's account.
Yeah, or you just kind of look through the window of someone who has Netflix and you're able to go, excuse me, could you put it on Labyrinth, please? Why? Because the guys in the podcast are going to be talking about it. So look, that's us for this week. So all that's left for me to do is to thank yourself, Victoria.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Sarah McDowell. You're probably not listening because you're going to see Six for like the 10th time. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the BanterFlix podcast. But for now, until then, goodbye.